Hello folks, we're starting the week and I'm heading in to do some really intense marking, and I've got another class to teach in about, say 45 minutes time. So I picked out a few really good hobby nightmares for us to dive into today, and then we'll get into some meatier ones on Wednesday and Friday. How about that this week? We'll change it up a little bit. But anyway, here is Mark, and he says, "Hi Northern, it's Mark here again." Hello Mark, how's it going, dude? I have a short story and a very minor nightmare about how I accidentally became the bad guy. Thankfully, it was only a short while, and I was able to course correct, if only barely. To set the scene, the Warhammer club I frequented would occasionally hold a tournament. Good. They would hold them around 3 times a year. There would often be a bit of a narrative spin to the tournament, and I always was excited for our club tournaments whenever they came around. You got to play a lot of games. I tended to finish a lot of painting goals in preparation for them, and the competition itself was rather fun. Okay. I'm noticing a lot of people do that, right? They need structure around painting. You listening, yes you, do you need structure around painting? Are you able to just sit there and go, now I need to paint my models, or put them together? Or are you the kind of person who is very much, you know what I mean? Like you need that structure, you need something to aim for to do your painting. Let me know in the comment section. Anyway. When one of these tournaments rolled around, I got my Tau ready. Tau has been my main faction for a long time. I really enjoy the speed and agility of the army. My list ran a lot of very fast medium range units, and the general plan was always to kind of nibble at the edges of the opponent's army whilst hiding from the return fire. It's the kind of list that can fall apart if I misplay, but can be very oppressive on the tabletop. It could steamroll hard after a favourable trade or two. At that time, I was still chasing the dream of going undefeated at a tournament. I'd regularly get close but would always lose one of my 3 games. So colour me excited when I'm going into round 3 with 2 wins under my belt at this tournament against a mechanised guard list. This guy spent a lot of time converting them into guards who had plundered Tau tech. So he was very excited to play my Tau, which, to be honest, is a bit refreshing of an outlier for a Tau player. Yeah, I know. If this is in 7th edition, no wonder people didn't like playing you, because Tau... Listen, alright, so when I was working Games Workshop, I started around about the time, at least in stores, around about the time when we got the Tau Codex that was feared. They were... the Tau gun line was the most cheesy... OP, literally remove your models please army in the game at that point. And it got to the stage at our store where if somebody actually brought out a Tau gun line list, the other person would just not play. They would just be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not wasting my time. I've only got a few hours. On that point though, before I carry on with this hobby nightmare, how do you guys feel on having your hobby time wasted? This is something that comes up on Wednesday, but I wanted to touch on it now. What I mean by that is, there was a time when I was at university when I'd done a lot of work that week to make sure that I had a day off on the Friday of that week, because I had a friend visiting me that evening. We were going to go out and for a bit of debauchery around town, and it was going to be really fun. So I worked really, really, really hard, got all my work done, got all my university stuff squared away. So on Friday I had the day off, and I chose in my Friday to go down to the local Games Workshop and play a game with a friend of mine who was in the area. Now, this friend didn't really come to our gaming group at the university because he thought we were all really casual. But since all of my university friends were, bogged down with work, I said, let's go in, have some fun, and it'll be fine. I said to him, listen, I want a nice casual game. I don't want to play for blood. I'm going to bring some fluffy Grey Knight list that is just going to be me running up the field trying to duel with big monsters, right? I'm not going to be shooting at you too much. I'm not going to bring any vehicles. I'm just going to bring, some cool stuff. And he said, that's fine. I'll be in Games Workshop from like 2 o'clock and we'll get the game going. Okay, cool. So I turn up. What does he get? 2 Riptides. Straight out the box. 2 Riptides and a full Tau gunline list, which at the time was pretty OP. To the point that I said to him, listen man, that list is overpowered in our club, we don't play it. I asked for a nice casual game. You know what he said? Ugh, this is casual for me, right? I was at Games Workshop at this point. He's the only person there. I played him, and we got to turn 5. I literally survived until turn 5. I played my backside off, right? And he still won, and the dice handed the win to him, which is the most frustrating thing in the world after I tried so hard to stay on the tabletop, you know? And after the game, he was actually like, oh, you don't seem too happy about the game. And I was like, I'm not. I've just wasted 3 hours of my time. That's ruined my day. This is not the game I wanted to play, right? I want to be G'd up before I go out. I want a nice, tight game, you know? But this was just literally me having most of my army annihilated at the top of turn 1, and then clinging on to objectives for the rest of the game whilst you get to play with your army. That's not fun. And your list seems tailor-made to just juke mine off the tabletop. This isn't a nice casual game. And I felt like my entire day had been ruined, because it's my day off. I planned all week for this, dude. All week. And this guy ruined it. And just didn't get it. You know, it was the most frustrating game of 40k I've ever played. And that was against the Tau Gunline list. So they did have a serious rep back in the day. So, are there any armies back in the day that you, in the comment section, that you literally would just say, nah? You know, if you're just caught at a wrong time, I'm not saying be a bad sport. I'm saying, like, when somebody says, oh, do you want to play a game of 40k? You go, yeah, sure, man. But you're really tired and you're teetering on the edge of saying no. And then they say, oh, I'm going to play with such and such an army. And you go, are you playing that list? And they go, yeah. And you go, nah, I'm good, man, actually. Were there any armies like that in 40k? Let me know. But let's carry on with Tal Mark's story, shall we? Because he's fighting a player here who has actually done quite a lot of converting with his list. He's got an Imperial Guard mechanized force, which is cool, and they've looted Tau tanks against our friend here, Mark, who is going 2-0 up in the tournament and might get an undefeated tournament under his belt. So that'd be cool. Let's move on. I start my usual pre-game talk with my opponent to make sure he isn't surprised by a gotcha and my army special rules. One of the Tau's gimmicks at the time was that nearby units could fire Overwatch to help out a friendly unit when they were charged. Dude, that slowed down the game so much, I remember that. That rule never did anything but waste time. Yeah, there you go. Annoy my opponent and cause confusion. Before every game, I would take the time to try to explain it. I even had a copy of the rule printed out for my opponent because of the chronic issues that it caused. I'd encourage them to call over the tournament organiser if they had any questions whilst I was doing it. So they knew I was on the up and up. It never really averted the confusing rules conversations, but hey, at least I tried. Yeah, that's true. That's true. You could easily just say, get good, scrub, and get on with it, but, you know. I asked my opponent, and I quote, have you played Tau before, this edition? Unquote. To which my opponent says, yeah, I've played like 5 times. I'm thinking, great! Great, he's played 5 times against Tau. I'll just do a quick refresher for him then, but he should know how to play by now. That will make my life a lot easier with less rules discussions necessary. Seriously, the rules of Tau in that stage really suck the fun out of the game for some people. Okay. Turn 1 rolls around and I get to go first. My opponent had left his flank exposed, and I was able to take massive damage of his bad position. Sorry, massive advantage of his bad positioning. Guardsmen and tanks alike were torn apart by efficient Tau shooting. My army was positioned in such a way that any return fire on my core would be minimal. My first 3-0 tournament was practically guaranteed at this point. This guy was almost certainly getting steamrolled hard. Like the whole army off the table turned 3 hard. It was one of those moments where in my head I was trying to stay calm so I didn't get too anxious and mess up my game. During my opponent's turn, he started complaining a bit about some of the other games. People were super strict on the rules and he didn't understand why. You're at a tournament! Sorry, just Tourette's there. Just comes out sometimes whenever I come across this kind of lunacy. At this point, I am a little confused, so we keep talking about it. He mentions he lost his first 2 games and that they were very unfun. I am very confused now because I am undefeated in the last round of a tournament playing against somebody who should be at the bottom of the bracket. Yeah, that is weird. That is weird. Yeah, you should not be... Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons why this happens isn't just because you can find out who the best player is on the day. It's because the two brackets are playing for different things, you know? The guys who lose 2 games just want a fun game for their last game in a tournament, where the guys who win the first 2 games want to play for blood because they're there to be challenged and they're there to win the tournament, you know what I mean? That's kind of why it's done, rather than finding out who the best player is, because that's, you know, I don't know. The best tournaments I've ever seen and gone to are the ones where it's just like, you know, this guy's got the best painted army, and he's put the most effort into his games today. Best sportsman, he wins the tournament, you know? Anyway, it turns out what he had said... Sorry. It turns out what he said... When he said he played 5 games, he meant 5 total games of Warhammer 40k ever. Which meant I had just ruthlessly eviscerated this poor guy's army at the end of one of his first Warhammer experiences. I really lived up to all of the negative Tau player stereotypes there. Nothing to see here, just another try-hard Tau player being uninteractive and telling his opponent to pick up his army. Welcome to the hobby, scrub. I told my opponent that I was 2-0 up, and I'd thought he was also 2-0 up in the tournament. I mentioned I thought that he meant that he had had 5 games against Tau recently, not 5 games in total. I explained that at tournaments people usually take a harder stance on rules, and that's why he was running into all of these frustrating rules calls. At this point, I see he is naturally frustrated. I tell him that we should reset the tone of the game and just treat it as a chill teaching game. I also invite him to play an actual teaching game with me at a later date. The rest of the game was a lot of fun. We focused more on the story of what was happening. I explained some of the nuances of the rules, what I was trying to do to take advantage of the rules, and how we could do it too. At the end, he mentions he was happy to have played it with me and that round, and we could have a teaching game the following week. I did end up winning and going undefeated at the tournament. When I think back to this tournament though, I am prouder of my response to the situation than my first 3-0 tournament. So you should be. So you should be. That was quick thinking. That was quick thinking, man. You done well there. Very well done. My opponent ended up becoming a regular at the store after that. I talked to the tournament organiser for the club and mentioned that I thought the true root of the cause of the issue was the pairing process. My opponent should have been playing against somebody else who was 0-2. At the bottom, people usually commiserate and are looking for a fun game. Yeah, that's what I said. I should have been into somebody who was 2-0 and looking for a tough fight. The pairing wasn't really a fair situation for either of us. After that, the tournaments at the club have had a better pairing process. Well, that's my quick hobby nightmare. I hope you liked it, Mark. I did, man. That was good. That was excellent. And very quick thinking there. Well done to you. I thought that was going to go pear-shaped. Like, really pear-shaped. You know, you've done well. You've done very well. And that is why I say, in this hobby, if you're starting out and you're coming across people who are coming into the hobby for the first time, you are a custodian of what we do here. It is very, 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 very important that you maintain decorum and you play the game. What I mean by that is, don't just play the game by its rules. Look at what's happening on the tabletop and play the game, son. Do you know what I mean? If you're playing against a little kid, or you're playing against somebody who's really inexperienced and hasn't been playing very much and wants to learn, play that kind of game with them. Read the room. If you're one of these idiots who plays for blood every single time and you just say, well, they've got to learn, haven't they, somehow? Dude, you're a moron. You are a moron who simply finds far too much of their self-worth in winning games of toy soldiers. Don't do that, right? If you're playing one of your friends who's into 40k, go for it. If you're playing in a tournament, go for it. You know, if you're playing against another player who's, you know, going to bring a tough list and wants to play an absolute really good game of 40k, go for it. Most of the time, those are the games you're going to be playing anyway, right? But when you're looking across the table and you see a kid, or you see someone just starting out, or someone not quite sure of what rules they're meant to be doing, or they've got a new army, play the game accordingly. Play the game in the spirit it's meant to be played in. Or, you're a terrible Warhammer 40,000 player. I've said it there. Right there, verbatim for you, black and white. If you don't follow that way, if you disagree with me there, in my opinion, you are not a very good 40k player. You can win all of the tournaments in the world, But if you don't play the game in the spirit of the game, you're not a very good 40k player. I don't care if you win every single tournament that there is. I don't care if you go on the Grand Tournament circuit and win every single one. If you do that, and you don't play the game in the spirit the game's meant to be played, you're not a very good 40k player. Simple. Simple. Alright. Robbie says, "Howdy North, it's been a while since I've had anything to write in about since my gaming hobby has been pretty much perfect. However, I recently learned of a horror story I unwittingly experienced 4 or 5 years ago, in the pre-lockdown times, lost to my memory now of course. I was playing Kill Team at the local hobby shop, and at that time, the Rogue Trader Kill Team set just came out. I got it from the manager as a birthday gift, that's a good store, and my favourite part of it was actually the board it came with. It had a ship map, with a bunch of environmental conditions like hull depressurization, lights going out, stuff like that. Since I'm a sucker for shipboard in combat, I use that when gaming at this shop." Insert Smelly Cadian. I thought they said Canadian there. Insert Smelly Cadian. Smelly Cadian appeared to be an alright guy. We sat down to play some Kill Team on my ship board. His guardsman versus my Dark Eldar. It was basically capture the flag, with a chest full of treasure his men were guarding, whilst my elves were trying to steal it for the shiggles. It was rather one-sided for the most part, due to the map being pretty tight close quarters, and him being within an arm's reach of Dark Eldar. Not a very good place to be in at the best of times. At the end of round 4, my Cabalites are opening the door to the treasure room after murdering all but one of his guardsmen. Round 5 and he wins initiative. The last man standing shakes off his nerves, readies his bayonet and charges. The guy made the charge, however, was then in melee range with Dark Eldar, and was promptly reduced to tomato puree. As he died, however, Smelly Cadian used the command points he had garnered and generated over the last 2 turns to activate a stratagem where, when a unit dies, it may detonate a grenade on top of itself. Boom! In one swoop, my entire team of Cabalites packed into that hallway are struck down. That's amazing! That's awesome! That is awesome! Oh, I love that. That's really funny. I wouldn't even be mad at that. I wouldn't even be mad. Oh my god. The entire table was cleared. 100% unit death on both sides. Since he was on defense, he won by default. Oh my god. Yeah, I wouldn't even be mad. I would not even be mad. I'd be howling at this point. That is really funny. In fact, that is the most guardsman thing ever to do. To go in and be brave but die horribly, and like one of your grenades just goes off by chance and kills everybody there. That's hilarious. I love it. We laughed about it and I loved it. Yeah, man, you're a good hobbyist for doing that. That's good. It was probably the greatest loss I've ever suffered. However, if you know Kill Team very well, you may already know the problem. Oh no. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't ruin it for me, please. Fast forward to me chatting with friends the other day. I was looking into making a Tempestus Scion Kill Team and was looking through the Guardsman stratagems for that edition of Kill Team. Surprisingly, I could not find the stratagem about detonating a grenade on myself when a unit died. I asked around my friend group and found out that no such stratagem exists, at least not in the core rules. It wasn't even in some White Dwarf super obscure thing when I went looking. It simply does not exist. Smelly Cadian made up the stratagem, knowing nobody would call him out on it in a casual environment when there's already so many rules to keep track of. Oh no. Oh. Why ruin it? Not your fault, man. Just like that, one of the most hilarious losses I ever experienced, had the wind taken out of it and felt like just losing to a cheating bastard. That's all for the story, North. Thanks for reading. I also wanted to thank you again for providing hours of content to listen to whilst painting or writing. Whilst writing? I can't do that. Can you listen to somebody talking whilst writing? I can't. I need music. Or whatever. One day I feel like sending in a bunch of my work to show off. I will do. but I feel like that wouldn't fly. Happy wargaming. Robbie, the Dark Eldar stereotype. By Dark Eldar stereotype, are you saying that you're one of these emo dudes who really looks like he's into Dark Eldar? Like a goth, you know what I mean. I love Dark Eldar creatures, mate. I see them in rock clubs all the time. Brilliant. Or in the background dancers on Adam's Family on that too. Anyway, yeah, I can't write whilst I'm listening to somebody talking. Singing, yes. You know, Disturbed are one of my go-to bands when I'm like writing 40k lore. It's just too good. But yeah, if you want to send in your writing, cool. I don't mind that. If it's good, I'll read it out. If it's applicable to something I'm doing, I'll read it out. And painting, definitely send it in, and I will definitely get that on the go. Let me just have a little double check to see if I've got. No, I don't. All right, so I thought you sent me a picture of one of your models there, but you hadn't. Anyway, I love you all long time. I've got to go do some work now, but I will speak to you tomorrow for some more 40k rants, and then on Wednesday for some more 40k nightmares. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you then. Have a good one. Bye now.